Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to another episode of News Dose. We're giving you all of the latest news in the gaming world, and there has been a lot of questions about the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. Fans are starved for more information, but I ran across something very interesting. Well, Ed Boon, the creative director of Mortal Kombat, did a survey asking fans to choose what the most important factor will be when buying a next-generation console, and this particular survey got 50,000 responses. So that's a pretty good sample size actually, but the results may be a little shocking, so we're going to go over all that here in just a moment. Also, Sony made a decision that has caused quite a stir among fans. Some good news for Xbox fans that likes Japanese games. Will Shenmue get a fourth installment? And Animal Crossing New Horizon looks exactly as expected. In short, that's great. But before we get into all that, let's first talk about this Ed Boon survey. This survey asked a very simple question. What is the most important thing for you when it comes to buying a next-generation console? And out of 50,000 votes, which is a pretty nice sample size, 37.5% of all of the voters chose affordable price. Surprisingly, at second place with 30% was backwards compatibility, followed by graphics at 19%, and at dead last, exclusive games at only 13%. And before I do continue, I do want to say all of these things are very important. This, however, is still a good representation for the exact reason as to why price is extremely important when it comes to next-generation consoles. This is also why it's being reported that the PlayStation 5 is struggling with the price of its components being $450, which could mean it will be $500 at retail. I fully believe that Sony was not expecting the PlayStation 5 to cost as much as it does, and I think that they wanted to hit that $400 mark to have a price advantage over Xbox. And it's also why they are in a wait-and-see mode with whatever the price for the Xbox Series X will be. Based off all the knowledge that we have right now available to us is that Xbox Series X is in the lead with power. I mean, this still is an if, but if the Xbox Series X is also priced at $500, then that is not good for Sony. Sony absolutely needs to have the price advantage, especially if the Xbox Series X is more powerful. We also need to remember that the Xbox is reportedly working on two next-generation consoles to target both power as well as price. The Power Tower Xbox Series X, and then a much more affordable option, Xbox Lockhart. Lockhart, of course, is expected to be a cheaper alternative with a faster processor than the Xbox One X. However, it will be 1080p rather than 4K. So pretty much it's expected to target 1080p 60 frames per second. This allows Xbox to have options. They can price Xbox Series X at $500, though I wouldn't be shocked if it was more, to be completely honest. And then you have Lockhart, which could be like $300, maybe $400. Though the main question still remains, how important is price? Well, I think we can look at the current generation for that answer as well. Xbox One X and the PlayStation 4 Pro is more powerful than the Xbox One S and standard PlayStation 4, but however, it's these cheaper models that sells more, and that's very telling on what the mass market wants. While yes, there is a sizable market that wants a more powerful console, which is why Xbox One X has still sold well. It's just not the majority. A lot of people are more willing to pay less for a little less power, but still good consoles. The ones buying Xbox One X and the PlayStation 4 for the most part are more for the hardcore fanaticals that ends up buying these ultra powerful consoles. Again, power is still very important though, but there is a balance to be had, and depending on somebody's budget, they may not be willing to pay more for that extra power. We saw this with the PlayStation 3 as well, which was priced at $600 at launch. One big reason for this was the Blu-ray drive, of course, which was new at the time. It increased the prices, but ultimately, price did win the battle as well, since the Xbox 360 outsold the PlayStation 3 for most of the generation, especially over in the United States, and really, it wasn't up until the PlayStation 3 Slim came out that really changed it all, which pretty much wiped out the price disadvantage. The Xbox brand at that time was not a very well-known brand either, considering the original Xbox wasn't really a major success and the PlayStation was coming off the most successful home console ever, the PlayStation 2. But the price was just too high for a lot of people, which is why early in the generation so many people jumped ship over to the Xbox 360. So yes, price is extremely important to a lot of people. Again though, it's not the only important factor, and I do want to be very clear about that. Power still is important, but just not so much that you ask for a price that's too high. There is a limit to how much you can ask people to pay. The question to that is, what do people consider affordable? We know Sony has had good luck at $400, but will $500 be too much? I personally don't think so myself, but everybody has different budgets. I do think that the Xbox will try to get to that $500 price point and probably take a small loss on each console sold, and based off what we do know, PlayStation 5 will also be at $500. This is an increase over previous generations, but I think we're getting better consoles this time around that aren't cutting corners like the previous generation. Last generation, they did cut corners with the processor, and this is the reason that we still don't have great frame rate even to this day. Now, see though, this is where the survey gets real interesting though, as dead last was exclusive games at 13%, which may surprise a lot of people. See, multi-platform games are actually oftentimes the most popular games in the entire industry. Games like Call of Duty, Fortnite, Madden, FIFA, Minecraft, Assassin's Creed, and really the list just goes on and on. I mean, these games are huge. They just don't get talked about online as much as exclusive games do. I mean, yes, games like God of War and Spider-Man are huge as well. That isn't a debate at all, but you have to keep in mind how popular multi-platform games are as well. It's really all about that balance though. You want to have a powerful console that is also affordable with both high-quality exclusives and third-party games. Ideally, you want a powerful console that doesn't break the bank with a healthy dose of exclusives. All of these factors are important, but price is a major factor for a lot of people, and there will be a limit to just how much people will be willing to pay. As to what that limit would be, I'm thinking that $400 would probably be preferable, but I think that $500 would be the absolute max. I think that people aren't going to want to go more than $500 for the most part. I will say this though, I was very surprised by backwards compatibility taking the number 2 spot on this list. I guess fans really do want to be able to continue having their PlayStation 4 and Xbox library going forward, and luckily Xbox will have backwards compatibility, and the PlayStation 5 is pretty much all but confirmed by this point. Either way though, I thought that this survey was interesting and could help represent why price is incredibly important for next generation consoles and not just exclusives and raw power. And this is why Xbox and Sony is in a bit of a stalemate of what the price will be. What about you though? What is the most important factor for you when buying a new console? Let me know in the comments below. Moving on, Sony announced that they have canceled their trip to both GDC as well as PAX East, which will be taking place later this month. I'm not sure about GDC, but Sony was supposed to be showing games like The Last of Us Part 2 at PAX East. Again, that was supposed to happen later this month, but unfortunately, with coronavirus spreading across China and now Korea, this has led Sony to making a tough decision not to travel while this epidemic is still active. This may not be a bad idea either, because at the end of the day, people's health is more important than video games. That's the bottom line here. But this news still has left some fans disappointed, and fans are pointing out that the United States only has 12 reported cases for the coronavirus. And while this is true, I think it's okay for Sony to be a little cautious here. I think it's also worth pointing out that other companies such as Facebook bailed out on GDC as well. For me though, I think this just speaks more on Sony's lack of communication with their hardcore fans, as Sony has been ultra silent the last few years when it comes to PlayStation. I think this silence has frustrated fans to the point they're getting upset about these type of things now. I do wonder if Sony wasn't so silent before all this, if people would still be upset. I really don't know, but I will say this. For fans out there that's upset, just be patient because once they start revealing more on the PlayStation 5, I'm sure we will have non-stop news from that point. Like I said before, at the end of the day, people's health is the most important thing here. Hey, maybe they'll reveal some new The Last of Us Part 2 trailer instead through something like State of Play. In other news though, we have 2 updates on separate games. The first of which is Shenmue 3, and apparently the Embracer Group CEO Lars Winifred went on to say while he loves the Shenmue franchise, that it is a challenge to see it as a mass product. This is certainly not something that fans are going to want to hear after Shenmue went on a huge hiatus after releasing Shenmue 2, and it could bring forth the question, will we ever see the end of the Shenmue franchise? That's the thing, Shenmue 3 apparently is not the last game, and to finish the story they will need to make several more, but with Shenmue 3 maybe not being a big time seller, it does beg the question on whether or not they will be able to make Shenmue 4 or if it will go on another large hiatus. Shenmue 3 of course was eventually crowdfunded and it did have some outside funding as well, but it was certainly a game that had to jump through several hoops just to be made. Creator Yu Suzuki has said in the past that Shenmue 4 will be easier to be made if Shenmue 3 sells well. I feel bad for Shenmue fans though, I really do. I know there is some passionate Shenmue fans out there, and with its future being uncertain for so many years, only to once again have that uncertain future, I know it has to be hard. I will end this on a positive note though, because once Shenmue 3 was wrapped up, creator Yu Suzuki did vow to never give up on finishing the Shenmue story. So from that point of view, it still looks plausible it could continue going forward. The other update though is that Darksiders Genisis has exceeded expectations, which is always great to hear. Darksiders as a franchise has been solid all around, and when they first announced Darksiders Genisis, I was excited to see how it would do in this new direction. The reviews were pretty solid with a 77 on Metacritic, but I was still curious as to how much it sold, and according to Lars Winifred, it exceeded his expectations. It did just release on consoles as well, so it should continue to gain traction there as well. Moving on though, Animal Crossing New Horizon finally had its dedicated direct, and we got a ton of information on what to expect from New Horizons. It looks excellent by the way, and probably my favorite thing about it is how you can pave the deserted island, and really you can make it feel like your own town. I could see people really unlocking their creative side playing this game with making their own little community. It looks really impressive, and you know Nintendo really does nail down their attention to detail, so that shouldn't be too surprising. They did answer some questions as well, and you can actually have a shared island with 8 separate accounts on one Nintendo Switch. This means if you have family members, you can actually share one island and even have separate houses on that island. Granted, you also probably need to trust that this person won't ruin your island, but it's still cool that you can at least do this. You will also be able to make use of Amiibo, can visit friends from other islands using a code, and there is unfortunate news here as well, because you cannot back up your data through the cloud, but they will have some kind of service that allows you to recover backed up data from some server available after launch. I don't really like the sound of that, but you know, overall, Animal Crossing New Horizon is sounding really good. And speaking of sounding good, Xbox has been putting a heavy emphasis on Japanese games lately. Phil Spencer did just come back from Japan a few weeks ago, and since that point, we got a big month of Xbox Game Pass games that has some nice Japanese games, including Final Fantasy XV Royal Edition, you have Kingdom Hearts 3, and Yakuza 0 all in Game Pass this month. Well, now for you Xbox Live Gold members, you will now be able to play Shining Resonance, Naruto Shinobi Strike, and Valkyrie Chronicles this weekend absolutely free. They're also being pretty heavily discounted, so if you like one of these games, you can buy it and just keep playing it if you want to play beyond the weekend. I would highly recommend trying Valkyrie Chronicles 4. This is one of the best JRPGs on the Xbox One available right now, so definitely go check that one out. I like this new direction Xbox is taking though. They're putting a heavy emphasis on Japanese games, which is a weakness for Xbox, and hopefully we continue to see this kind of support with more Japanese games releasing on Xbox. Sakura Wars was just announced for the PlayStation 4, which is published by Sega, and I would like to see that come over to Xbox. Let's make it happen. Now for the last bit of news, I thought this was interesting, and that Respawn Entertainment considered delaying Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order to better polish the game, but instead decided to launch it because they wanted to release it during the holiday season. Jedi Fallen Order is a really good game, but one flaw it did have was it was a little buggy, so it could have probably used a few extra months to iron out these issues. So for consumers, I think that may have been ideal. Ultimately though, it did seem to pay off for Respawn though, because it sold above expectations, and I think it was like 6 or 8 million copies that they sold. I do wonder if this type of thing happens often though, where developers feel pressured to release a game in a specific time frame, knowing the game may have issues. I don't know, I would have been fine if it got delayed myself, especially considering I think that the holiday is always way too packed the way it is, but like I said, it did pay off for Respawn Entertainment. Really now, it's just a matter of what fans think. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Peace out.